Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Let's talk Virgil Ortiz's victory over Erickson Lubin, second round KO. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this fight to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, folks, this fight surprised me. I thought I had a shot at a heist here, right? I took Lubin at about 5-1 to win the fight. The odds actually jumped after I made the bet, right? I had Lubin at around a 5-1 plus 500, hedged with the over 6.5 rounds, right? Lubin got caught by Jamel Charlo, but was able to make it into the 9th round against Sebastian Fundora. Had not been dropped in other fights. Ortiz, of course, was coming off fights that went the distance. A dream off. I thought that was a close fight. The Boachuk fight, I didn't think was close. I thought Lubin lost that fight. Now, this fight, shocking to me. One man's opinion, the fight ended not too long ago. You can lose a fight a lot of ways, right? This is that fight that was lost on strategy. You're in the second round. A lot of things are going for you, right? Ortiz is a big-time puncher. Ortiz has one of boxing's best jabs. But you're looking at Ortiz, who's had health problems in the past, and Ortiz looked visibly heavier. I mean, visibly heavier than he did at the weigh-in. So you're looking at Ortiz and you're thinking, wow, what happens if this fight goes a few rounds? Also, Ortiz was dazed by Mean Machine. Ortiz was dropped twice by Boachuk. As big a puncher as Ortiz is, you have to have some concerns about his chin. Well, folks, believe it or not, in the second round of this fight, without anything resembling the punishment doled out by Fabio Wardley against Joe Parker that had Joe Parker up on the ropes late in that fight, here, believe it or not, Erickson Lubin thought it was a good idea to go over to the ropes. Folks, this was strategy. He wasn't forced over to the ropes. He wasn't desperate in the second round of a fight where he hadn't been cold-cocked. He wasn't trying to get his balance. No, he voluntarily went over to the ropes. Now, what I want people to do is to think about that for a second. It's staggering. He's a southpaw. He has angles to play against a jabber, an orthodox jabber. Right? He gives up whatever southpaw, righty dynamic existed by going over to the ropes. I'm guessing he thought that if he forced Ortiz, who is a puncher, to throw hooks, that he would be able to roll with the punches and might cause Ortiz to throw himself out. Right? There had to be some thought process behind the decision to go over by the ropes. Right? Maybe he watched too many Ali Foreman tapes and thought, hey, I'm going to rope-a-dope this guy. Maybe that was his thought process. Folks, Lubin found out that he's not Ali. Right? He goes over by the ropes, and Ortiz has carte blanche. Because understand, Lubin is not throwing volume off the ropes. Lubin looks a lot like Joe Parker. But Joe Parker, you understood, was recovering from a very tough end of the prior round. right? You understood that. Here, Lubin looks like he's 100% against a guy who looks heavy, right? I'm positive that Ortiz's weight tonight for this 154 fight had to be at least in the high 160s, right? And again, this is a guy who, look up his history. Ortiz has had some physical problems that had him out of the ring for a while earlier in his career. You thought, hey, this is the guy who you want to put extra stress on his body. Instead, Lubin tries some rope-a-dope strategy. And understand how ill-advised it was. Ortiz is skillful, doesn't allow him to clinch. Ortiz is bouncing in the pocket. I think Ortiz even forgot in the moment that Lubin was a southpaw, because the key punch in the last exchange is Ortiz well over on Lubin's left side. In other words, Ortiz is over by Lubin's dominant hand. You would have thought, if this is a setup and Lubin's waiting to suddenly come off the ropes with a big punch, you thought he had that opportunity, because Ortiz is over by his dominant hand. But Lubin didn't pull the trigger. Ortiz hits him with hooks, right? Think about it. An Ortiz fight where his jab doesn't even play a role in the last exchange. Ortiz lands a haymaker right hook. That's the punch, it seems to me, hurt Lubin the most. And folks, Lubin is out on his feet. Right? Let me give the referee an A grade here. This guy saved Lubin from major damage. Right? Lubin, he's upright. He's kind of lodged against the ropes. But you understood the elevator was no longer going to the top floor. He's out on his feet. The ref does a great job jumping between the two of them. Right, so folks, let me make a few points here. Jaron Ennis was at the fight. Jaron Ennis hops in the ring right after the fight. Jaron Ennis is a bit too hyper. Wants to place a bet with Ortiz, who was calm and collected. Wants to place a bet on their upcoming fight with the cameras rolling. Right? Ortiz was cool. Ortiz basically said, look, I don't bet. Somebody needs to tell Jaron Ennis about the news cycle. Right? Let's just say talk about betting on sports, particularly at the sporting event, isn't the best idea in this, we'll call it a Chauncey Billups era. Right? Jaron Ennis missed the memo. Ortiz, fortunately for boxing, had the common sense, and I know boxing's a bit different, right? I know Mike Tyson talked about betting on himself in the past and stuff like that. But Ortiz, in this era, right, Terry Rozier and stuff like that, Ortiz had the common sense to say, look, I don't bet. You can say what you want, I'm confident, but I'm not going to bet you. Right now, what I think excited Jaron Ennis, because his trash talk was above and beyond regular trash talk. I think what excited him was just the idea that Ortiz looked heavy. Right? Understand, Ortiz is having a problem making 154. No one has to tell you. You can see it. Right? Ortiz looked heavy. Didn't look particularly agile. I'm sure Ennis, who's ambidextrous, is going to use the lateral movement that somehow was missing from the round and a half that we got from Erickson Lubin. Right? Lubin clearly saw things on film. Maybe he thought by going over to the ropes voluntarily, he's not forced over to the ropes. Maybe he thought going over to the ropes voluntarily would, cause Ortiz to abandon his jab, and it did. Right? Ortiz goes over there, sees it as an opportunity, and is throwing hooks. The problem is, against this level of puncher, that's a high-risk strategy. Right? Ali, if you remember the rope-a-dope against Foreman, huge puncher. But Ali's doing things like grabbing the back of Foreman's head, right? The kind of tactics he used against Joe Frazier in their second fight. Right? Ali's mixing in clinches and stuff like that. And Foreman, big guy, threw punches at a wider radius than did Virgil Ortiz. Well, here Ortiz is looking for an opening. Then he goes over on Lubin's left side, highly dangerous, and finds one. Folks, that's the end of the fight. Right? Ortiz, found the hole in Lubin's rope-a-dope defense. I'm guessing that was the big reveal strategy-wise that Lubin had planned for Ortiz. Right? Let me just say, we need to talk strategy here. Right? The Foreman who fought Ali in 74 didn't have experience going the distance like Ortiz has off his last two fights. Again, Madrimov, 12 rounds. Boachuk, 12 rounds. Right? Lubin, in the second round, looks like he's trying to tire out Ortiz. Let me say this too, and I know it's not obvious looking at this film. Lubin is a great body puncher. Some body punchers would try to hurt your resistance, hurt your stamina by going to the body. I think Lubin outthought himself. Maybe he thought, you know what? My opponent thinks I'm going to go to the body. Instead, I'm going to go over here by the side of the ropes. Right? Let me say this too. The Charlo fight, if you remember that knockout where Lubin gets stopped in the first round, it's Lubin who's in the middle of the ring. It's Charlo who's over by the ropes. Maybe Lubin thought he could pull a Jermell Charlo and then got caught before he was able to, put the plan in action. But folks, make no mistake, Lubin's on the ropes by design. He wasn't overpowered. He's blown out, right? He's clearly stopped. Good stoppage by the referee. But until the last three punches, understand, Lubin has his wits about him. Right? This is not the situation where a fighter is in there and somehow he's in against the bull and the bull backs him over to the ropes. This is not that situation. This is more Ali Foreman, where Ali's fighting Foreman, then Ali voluntarily goes over to the ropes. And Foreman then follows him over there and punches himself out. Right? Only in this fight, Ortiz is able to move a lot. Ortiz is the one using the lateral movement, believe it or not Lubin. And Ortiz is the one who has him on the ropes, and like Andre Ward did against Kovalev, is bouncing, right? Has the other guy backed up and is going left to right. In fact, he's going right to left. And Lubin couldn't clinch him, couldn't cover up properly. Ortiz is throwing punches with both hands. Couldn't tie up one hand. I doubt this is the way Lubin thought things would work out. Let me say, too, the punch that hurts him, Ortiz is parallel to him. In other words, Ortiz is so far on Lubin's left side that he seems to me to be on the same plane as him. Right? Food for thought. Lubin had an opportunity to pivot away from the corner, get the fight in the middle of the ring. Again, this is southpaw against righty. Right? The guy with the great jab is the righty. You thought a southpaw would be able to dodge the jab, right, and would be able to dole out punishment. Ortiz looked heavy for this fight. Right, folks? He looked so heavy, I think he'd have problems making 160. One man's opinion. In any event, I was way off on this fight. I thought Lubin had a much better chance. He didn't make it to the third round. I had the over 6.5. This fight ended 1.5 rounds in. Right? I congratulate Virgil Ortiz. Huge fight scheduled. Assuming Ortiz can make weight with Jaron Ennis, who, let's be blunt here, has moved up to a heavier division, and he's now facing one of the biggest punchers in that division. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.